Finding a spiritual balance in your love life. A Charleston-born author, award-winning journalist, and ordained minister, Dr. Arlecia Simmons, has just released a new book, Diggin' for Intimacy, Sex, Sensuality, and Loving God. She joins us now and at a perfect time just before Valentine's Day. First of all, congratulations on your latest book.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited about it.
So let me just ask this first question. Is God and sensuality mutually exclusive?
God created sensuality. God created our bodies, and it is with our bodies and our relationships that we honor God and that we honor each other. So, sometimes we separate the two, but God is in our relationships and God is in our sexuality as well as in our sensuality.
You say that this book is something that church girls didn't know they needed because it explores certain issues that just don't get discussed. Why is that?
Well, I grew up in a church in North Charleston, South Carolina, the New Hope Missionary Baptist Church, and they gave us really good training about the Bible and about being good and being good citizens. But when it came to those personal items about being, a woman as it relates to your sexuality and understanding, being in a relationship, we just did not get that. And so I believe it's a responsibility that has to happen in the home as well. If you're a Christian and if you're raising children in a Christian environment, that's something that should be addressed so that you take care of the whole person. And so as I thought about, my journey as a young person and just feeling like, I didn't know enough about relationships to enter them, that I've been stumbling through life. And now here I am in my mid-40s and I'm not alone. And because we haven't had so many vital conversations, that we're just kind of trial and error doing this thing called love and relationships. And I do believe that the church has to take part in that.
So what do you say to people who find that being a godly person means that sex only has its place in procreation?
Well, it's one of those things. Everyone comes to their faith journey, whatever your faith journey is, whatever your faith tradition, in a variety of ways. And I think, you have to think through your theology. You have to have conversations. And at the end of the day, my premise is you and God have to be in relationship. So whatever it is that you are doing, whatever it is that you are sharing with someone outside of your godly relationship, that's something that you have to make a decision on. And, I know that some people are told you need to wait until marriage, but for many of us, marriage never comes. So then how do we address that in our personal lives, in our spiritual lives? And how do we continue to love ourselves as well as love God with all of who we are?
So how do you do it? I don't want to give away what's in the pages of your book, but for some younger women who may be watching this and they think, I've been brought up in the church and I've been taught to think and feel a certain way about my body, about the way I relate to someone I'm attracted to. What do they do about it? What should they do about it? Do they explore it? Do they talk to their minister about it? What do they do?
Yeah, I really believe you should have conversations with your religious leaders and those who serve in some capacity of authority in your life. But the problem is so many people aren't willing to have the discussion. Thus, the reason I wrote the book as an ordained minister. But I think you really have to, one, you can do the religious route of talking with your religious leader. I also suggest in the book that there is a role for counseling and therapy. And so, you need to be able to go and unpack these emotions and these feelings, whether it's with your medical doctor or with someone in therapy. Because one of the things I do recognize is for many women, choosing to be intimate isn't something you get to do initially. For so many women, as well as young men, they are touched inappropriately at an early age. Yeah. And so it's a journey. It's not just one. I can't just give you one fix and say, do it this way. But I would suggest to those who are listening that you make decisions that, one, honor yourself, honor your partner, as well as honoring God.
Yes. And I would think that this tends to become, for some people, a thing of suppression, that they suppress those feelings, but then it ends up coming out in a self-destructive way. So what do you say to people who end up suppressing it and then kind of going against that sort of
Mhm.
God-loving exploration of their sensuality, when it comes to teen sex, when it comes to promiscuity,
Mhm.
how do you deal with those things?
Well, I believe the first thing is open communication. And so it begins in the home. And we know that all homes aren't places where loving conversations are happening.
Can be
But
embarrassing too,
it
right?
can be very embarrassing, especially for children. So some people may have watched the Netflix series Bridgerton, and in that series, the young woman gets married, and of course it's in the 1800s, but she gets married and she doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing on her wedding night, and then she doesn't even know how babies come to being. And I thought, we're still dealing with that. That isn't just a situation of the 1800s in that particular environment. So great communication. And I believe that parents have to begin age appropriate conversations with their children at an early age. In the book, I talk about when I was serving as an intern at a church, I hosted a session called Good Touch, Bad Touch, where I brought in a child psychologist to meet with the children. Of course, we got the permission of the parents to talk about their body and to help them identify the appropriate ways to talk about their body, and then to also talk about what is appropriate touch and what is inappropriate touch. So I believe when you begin having those discussions at a very early age, then by the time you get into your teenage years and you're doing this exploration where you have no guidebook, you will feel comfortable maybe going to your pastor or going to a parent or going to a mentor in the community. So my prayer has always been for me to be that person that young people could talk with when they had concerns and when they did not know where to go. Because when you do not know what to do, you will figure something out.
Absolutely. This is a great place to take a break. When we come back, we're going to let our viewers know where they can find this book. I have a couple more questions for you as well, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We've been chatting with ordained minister and author, Dr. Arlecia Simmons. She has just released a book. It is called Digging for Intimacy, Sex, Sensuality, and Loving God, and is finding that balance within ourselves of being a godly person, loving God, but also exploring our sexuality, our sensuality, which, as you say, they are not mutually exclusive. They can be married in one person. Now, Dr. Arlecia, I'm just curious about how this message then gets disseminated amongst people in the community. First of all, they need to read your book, but second of all, what can others who are leaders in the community start to broach this subject, not necessarily wait for people to come to them first to start talking about this?
Well, I think others in the community can begin, especially clergy members, can begin to educate themselves. So I had the privilege of going to seminary. I'm a graduate of Duke Divinity School. And so, I sat in some courageous conversations where we talked about sexuality. I actually took a class called Sexuality and the Body, where we went through scripture to talk about and to really navigate some challenging issues as it relates to homosexuality and the social construction of even the word. But I think it's just about educating yourself and really listening to your people. In the churches that I have been formed in, sometimes people will get pregnant at an early age, and we don't necessarily have a conversation about what the relationship was that the child was born into, but starting the communication, not just don't do it, but what is it that I shouldn't do? Help me unpack what sexuality is. And I believe with those discussions, whether it's in a Bible study, whether it's in a conference setting, that people will feel more comfortable seeing the church as a place of refuge where I can bring my whole body.
Absolutely. Now, you've also written another book. Can you tell us about this one?
Well, my first book was written 7 years ago. It's called Digging for Treasure, Jewels of Hope When Pressure and Time Collide. And that was a compilation of 40 jewels that I published on my 40th birthday. And that was more devotional writing where you had the jewel, you had a scripture passage, and then you had questions to answer. So the new book also has questions for you to reflect on, because I believe it's not enough for you just to read my journey, but I want you to dig into your own journey of intimacy.
And putting things out on paper, very cathartic. Well, viewers are going to find this book fascinating. They can find it on Amazon. It drops today. And then you're going to have a virtual celebration happening on Saturday, February 13th. Where can people find you?
Well, people can find me at drlecia.com. I'm on Facebook as well as a Dr. Lecia page. And so that's DRLECIA.com. And I welcome you to join me on this journey.
That's great. And people can also find you for group discussions and workshops and all kinds of things. So this has just been a real treat talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're back after this.